Hi folks, Don again. This is video 32 and the title is George's Rocket. This incident took place in our shop in Miesau, Germany when I was the maintenance supervisor. We had two motor pools. I worked out of the main one and we did all the scheduled services like oil changes, annual and semi-annual services, etc. Having a depot level MOS, anything like valve adjustments, troubleshooting problems, welding, and sometimes rebuild of items such as universal joints, etc., I handled instead of doing all the paperwork to send the vehicles to depot. Most of the time I could fix it quicker than doing the paperwork. A sergeant ran the remote motor pool. They did daily inspections, fluid checks, and daily lubrication. Any problems they found were sent to my shop to handle. The sergeant cleared it with me to teach my roommate, George, how to use the acetylene torch. Up until that time, I was doing all the welding. That was fine with me, as I was spending a lot of time welding with the torch, as we did not have an arc welder. The next day, I was working in my office, and suddenly I heard a really strange noise. Also, about that time, I was hearing feet slapping concrete. I got up and looked out into the bays, and my mechanics and a couple of drivers were diving over the workbenches and out the windows. Our shop held 5 bays with pits and was about 100 feet long. At the other end of the shop was George. He was holding a rocket engine. He was frozen in position, and about 8 inches above his hand started a flame about 8 inches in diameter and about 8 feet tall. The roar was deafening. I ran down and shut off the oxygen and then the acetylene and got George to lay down what was left of the torch. The sergeant had brought in a piece of 1/2 inch by 4 foot plate to have George cut a 4 inch by 4 foot strip off the side. George had never used a cutting torch before. The sergeant marked the piece with the soapstone and got George started on the cut. The sergeant left George unattended. What happened was as follows. The cut was 4 inches in from the edge. The cut was 4 feet long. George was concentrating on following the soap mark, as he should. As he was going along, he did not realize he was lowering his hands. Being a long cut, the piece got very hot. George had lowered his hands until the brass tubes for the torch, one for oxygen, the other for acetylene, rested on the piece. They promptly melted off and the tip fell to the floor. The gases ignited at the melt-off and the huge flame was created. Everybody ran fearing an explosion and left George instead of somebody just turning off the gas. The sergeant and I definitely had a discussion when he returned. I'm sure George, as well as myself, will remember that incident till our final day. All the best, folks.